Time for some more thoughtful reflections. Hello, YouTube friends. Even a couple of noodles here and there. A couple of noodles from the poodle. Um, yeah, uh, some more thoughtful reflections. I'm, I'm, I'm quite changed in the way I look at the world now. I've said this in my last videos, specifically, particularly since the shit show called the COVID shit show fake emergency. I knew all along that we were being duped on every possible level. And then, of course, it becomes a kind of tug of war here. How to navigate through mindfulness and thoughtfulness using our intelligence, I guess, our mind. And I'm becoming very suspicious of the intellectual, mental, mind thinking part of things. And when we listen to thoughtful people, there is a kind of sense of, that I feel anyway, a sense of community, a communion with, when there is thoughtfulness, not arrogance and aggression and dogma and all the worst parts of what the mind can conjure, the words, the sentences. I feel a kind of community which is based on what I interpret people are saying, but also based on what is transmitted by a person. I'm getting at something here. And it has to do, again, somewhat with Howdie Mickoski and his assertions on the nature of our reality, the fact this is a simulation of some kind, it's structured, we have a structure around us. And I'm going to talk about, first of all, the idea of this simulation. Makes a lot of sense because there is plenty of evidence that things are not the way they appear to be. In other words, there is a backdrop to what is appearance. In other words, there is a more substantial reality behind what it is that we appear to see in front of us. Real, imagined, I don't know. It's like however things work. Point is, one thing is that the mind always creates an obstacle for us. Thoughts, ideas create obstacles. That's what I'm pretty sure about this. Okay, what I'm getting towards is, okay, this simulation. Now, I thought to myself, what a bunch of fucking hooey to create a simulation for a few shits and giggles on a bunch of souls that are hanging around the neighborhood, and you want to extract as much fear and anxiety and love and hate, whatever you can, this sort of archon idea of having created the simulation, and then it's like a shit show from beginning to end. It's a hellhole, it's crap. It's like, and there is no doubt in my mind that everything indicates this to be a fact. The fact that this is a fucking nightmare of an existence from the point of view of all the suffering and the shit that goes on, both what we experience on different levels. Obviously, you know, if you're sleeping under a bridge in winter, it's a lot harder than if you're sleeping in a nice bed. However, the person sleeping in a nice bed still has nightmares, still has worries and wakes up and anxiety for whatever reason. Maybe even more than the person sleeping under a bridge. I don't know. I'm just saying that there are, we have charmed, or we believe ourselves to have charmed lives, but in fact, there is quite a bit of anxiety. What could be considered to be a form of suffering. And people say, well, that's just how the body works. Well, you know, reality is like difficulty. It's like, you know, what do we bounce up against? It's like, and you hit yourself, you hurt yourself, and it hurt, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, but why does it need to be that way? If it is a simulation, if it was created in order for some sort of fucked up, retarded asshole archon higher beings to get a few shits and giggles out of us, what the fuck? I mean, is that retarded or what? I mean, what a low life, what a low level of awareness or consciousness would be attached to those kind of beings. That's what I think. What a bunch of assholes. You fucking archons are a bunch of fucking retarded assholes to get a thrill out of our energy. Okay, so you say, well, matrix, matrix, matrix. You got to run your computer somehow, and you need the energy. And well, it makes sense to find some fucked up biological beings that feed you. Short of eating them, it's like, I guess, we do the eating down here. We take the cows and the chickens and the fish and whatever, or you could even extend it to plants, which are a life form, and we eat them. Everything eats everything else. So why shouldn't we be eaten as well? Don't sit on your high horse and say, oh, well, it's like they're tapping our energy, maybe for good reason, in order to have the simulation. All right. Devil's advocate here. So that's my conclusion. The fact that if this is like something that was created to undermine, our very nature, as Howdie Mickoski says, you have the soul, the divine spark, all those kind of things working within us. There is kind of a curious, in my mind, a curious sort of anomaly that how would we have gotten trapped here in the first place? What is it that seduced us to come here? Is it like the good food? Is it like, you go to a Paris restaurant and the waiter leads you by the nose but gives you something good to eat? I mean, this is like, how did this begin in the first place? Of course, it's all speculation. Why and how many of the souls that populate whatever is being populated on this plane of existence, how many souls have the spark, how many souls don't, how many of the creatures that are walking around aren't actually human, all this kind of shit. I mean, you could go on and speculate and dance on a pin. So what is real, what is solid, what is, in my mind, something that I can really feel satisfied with? And I have to tell you, it's not the mental process in terms of intelligence, because that always lets us down. And as an example, I was listening to a favorite, I'm not listening to him too much anymore, Cliff High, who has quite a bit of insight on stuff. And he just did an interview with the mystic guy, the Canadian guy with I think he's French Canadian, and he was talking about the moon. Okay, and I have quite often on High's videos commented, I would love him to address the anomalies that consensual science wants us to accept and believe in terms of living our realm being a ball that spins at 1,000 miles an hour at the equator, which is insane. It's crazy. Or even like, why is it that I take binoculars and I can't see anything on the ocean, but then as I look at the binoculars, I see stuff that should be disappearing on the curb? And please explain that. So Mr. High has addressed the anomaly of the moon. When you look at the moon, this is so obvious. This is something like, how could he have missed this for, he's 71 years old. He's all of a sudden realized, well, the moon is not what they tell us it is. In fact, it's a disk. Oh, I see, it's a disk. Because he comes to that conclusion because when you shine a light on a sphere, the light is most intense in the part of the sphere that's closest to you, and it fades toward the edges. But on the moon, for some reason, a sphere is floating, a ball floating in the vacuum of space, seems to have the same intensity of light on the edge as it does on the hot spot in the middle. So obviously it's not a sphere. He says, oh, it's not a sphere, it's a disk, and people live in it, and it's hollow or whatever, it's a skin in front of it. Well, okay, whatever the moon is, it's certainly not a ball. And I would then say, well, Mr. High, how about taking that understanding to the ball that you're living on and answering a few questions on the anomalies that exist around the ball that you're living on, like the 1,000 miles an hour, at the equator. Oh, no, I don't want to deal with that. Or like when things should disappear over the horizon because of the curvature of Earth, why is it that we can see shit with a good magnification? How about addressing that? So it's very selective. I've mentioned, I've gained quite a bit from Cliff High's commentary on different things, but it's becoming more and more evident that as long as the mind is overactive, you're going to be fooled. That's what I'm saying. You're going to be fooled with an overactive mind. And I would address this for this Howdie Mickoski as well. I really like him. I think he's an honest, upfront person. And I listened to a live thing he did with people commenting and stuff. And he kind of triggered me on his idea of conscience. This is, okay, I've covered the first part. Let me go to this, which is really interesting for me because there had been in my video for Howdie Mickoski, I was talking about creativity. And here is, he was basically saying any kind of activity. This is, I hope this is a correct synopsis. If I'm wrong, please tell me, Howdie, that any activity whatsoever is of no value as sparks, souls with sparks that have some relationship with the omnipotence, that higher omnipotence, not the fucktards who created the simulation, but this higher omnipotence, whatever that omnipotent consciousness might be, we have a relationship. I have always said for a decade now that I have a romance with eternity, and eternity encompasses this sense of continuation, this sense of not easily or at all being able to comprehend the nature of infinity. We cannot imagine if infinity is actually something that could be grasped in some way. We don't have the ability to do that. Just the same way we cannot conceive of nothing, because everything we experience is something. So you cannot say as an atheist, when you die, there's nothing, because what that means nothing. It means nothing. It has no meaning. To claim that there is nothing after you die has no meaning because you cannot conceive of nothing. So forget about it. Dance on that one. You can't do it. Crawl up your own ass. That's what basically that means. And nothing after death is crawling up your own ass or the snake eating itself. How does that work? So I was listening to the this live thing that Howdie did, and I think I listened to most of it. It was almost a couple of hours long, and I had it going in the background. Sometimes it's not good to do that because if I'm working on something else and I'm listening, I'm not catching everything. But I paused when he got to the part about conscience, because conscience is something that I believe to be quite special. And he referred to conscience as a kind of umpire. The idea that a human being has an internal umpire. What I say, conscience is that aspect to a human being that demands to be on the right side of things. And when I say the right side of things, it has nothing to do with a truth. It has to do with being honest about whatever it is that we're going through, and being able to feel a sweetness within ourselves about being on the right side of things. Now, he referred to this as, it's sort of like children. I think he was saying that conscience is sort of the level of relating to, what am I relating with to right now too? It's like I reflect on myself, and to be able to create that silence, that what did he call it? He called it totality. To be within this totality in a singular kind of way, without the duality, a totality. So the conclusion is conscience is another sort of aspect of an illusion that we create within ourselves to feel better, maybe, or something, to be on the right side of things. Although he does refer to being kind and generous and helpful and all that. Well, that comes through conscience. That is something as a result of conscience, not because, like, psychopaths don't have it. They don't have this desire or sense of being in the, well, they have a sense of being in the right place in terms of their psychosis. But I'm saying in like a, it's even hard to explain. The idea of feeling right about yourself can actually be a delusion. But that's why I say honesty is a really important aspect in conjunction with conscience. And I'm not looking for truth. I never ever look for truth. I'm not interested in truth because it's a moving target. I've said this so many times. But through conscience and honesty, I'm using the tools I'm given. So if these no longer matter, people like Howdie would say, don't even bother getting up out of bed, other than the fact that you're alive and you have to eat and all this. If it wasn't for that, you'd just stay in bed until you die. Or go ahead. I mean, all this goes with my introduction, the assumption that this simulation was created in order to fuck with us. So the best thing we can do is not be engaged in the simulation whatsoever. Okay, now here's where I depart. Here's where I introduce an idea, and it's related to creativity, something that Mickoski considers to be likely part of the illusion, part of the making yourself feel good in some way. And it's true that the creative side, as I experience creativity, gives me a sense of rightness about something, which has to do again with the idea of conscience. And conscience is sort of, as I would say, the default or underpinning nature of the highest part of ourselves in this experience, what we call reality. And very likely beyond the illusion or delusion within the simulation. All right. So I do not diminish or minimize conscience, because even with the idea of conscience, there is, I could easily see this sort of totality being contained within conscience. Again, my mind is speculating, formulating, and possibly obscuring. I mean, there's always that possibility. Like I say, as soon as we engage in the thoughtful, mindful, intellectual, whatever you want to call it, there is a chance of being fooled or undermined by ourselves or anyone else. Okay, I'm going to make this point. This is why I departed, and here's how I experience, how I feel the totality within the concept of creativity. So let's say that the, what shall I refer to? The human being that I want to be, or I feel is on the right track, as he says, to empty and exit the cave. I am 100% on board with that. And I have totally agreed with the notion of the shit show. I've explained this. I've understood this. I went through my anti-nuclear activity, understanding how devious, how sinister this reality actually has become in terms of its technologies and inventiveness and brilliance and all that kind of shit. Over the cliff. Just shove it all over the cliff. You're not going to lose anything by that. So I understood this quite a while ago. Now here though is, I suppose, to some extent, a level of contention. What I feel, or what I need to reflect on and think about, because to abandon all and everything is basically, in some form or other, what I understand, the strategy of exiting the cave. In other words, like a commenter on his video said, you know, I should never ever get up out of bed except for the fact I have to pay my bills. I thought it was funny for someone to say, yeah, I get you. Howdy, I really understand this. I should never. And Howdy said, yeah, technically you should never have to get out of bed. So, you know, not being attached to anything in the simulation is ultimately the thing. Now, even lying in bed is a kind of attachment. You feel good lying in bed? So, okay, the fact is you do get up. Okay, the fact is you have a body. So unless you blow your brains out, you still have some kind of connection with this existence that actually needs or does make sense as an activity, a high activity that would facilitate this possibility of escaping the illusion, the delusion, the simulation. And what is it that helps me be on the right path? God, the words the words that need to be used in order to explain this. It's probably why it's maybe good to have a large vocabulary. Anyway, no, it can be expressed simply. Here is what occurred to me. That creativity is not arbitrary. It's not part of the aspect of this reality that hinders us. In fact, it really does help. And here's how it helps. This is my conclusion. That even for a person like Howdie to come up with the conclusion of living in totality and having emptiness and living in the now, and there is no second before, no second after, there's only the presence of now. What is it that, let's say this is in fact the strategy, the being in the present, always, 100%. And that means emptying yourself of everything past or present, not present, past or future. It's like you're in the moment. What allows a person to be 100% in the moment? And I have concluded, I have come to the conclusion that since my assertion of having a romance with eternity is very much tied to the creative side of me, I wouldn't have this romance if it wasn't for the creative aspect, the creative side, whatever that might be in each person. Each person, I think, has their own level of higher-ness, higher self, whatever you want to call it, and creativity is definitely part of it. It can be hijacked and abused, obviously. We see it all the time. Like, we are seduced by incredibly magnificent things out there that are creatively produced. But I'm saying, in the best sense of the word, creativity brings forward this spark within us that gives us a connection, not to the shit show creative thing, but what I consider to be eternity, the continuity, that sort of totality, as Howdie expresses how to get into this state of totality. And what I conclude helps me to be within this present is the creative act, is the moment where I abandon myself completely to the possibility of something. I don't know what. I don't know. That's exactly it. The possibility. Again, you see, there is a difficulty when we use words, because words tend to have many attachments, things, interpretations and attachments. Like, when you say something to me, I find myself interpreting a word. So it's like anything. If I say blue, you have concepts. You could have 1,000 concepts of blue. And I mean, and then I could show you a painting with blue, and even what you see may not be, I don't know, may not be the same as what I see. We can agree that it's blue most likely, but as you proceed through the spectrum of blueness, maybe it'll turn into turquoise. And there's like a range, there's like a frequency. Everything is like on a continuity of frequency. And we're restricted by the experiences, like I say. You cannot think of nothing if all there is something. So ultimately, whatever anybody says, enlightenment or retarded shithead, it doesn't matter ultimately, because we are restricted by the conditioning of what it is that we're living in. And how do we get outside of that? Well, all right, people have meditative things or whatever. If you do that, I still maintain that the highest part of our experience is always tied to conscience, and the creative act gives us access to what I would call that highest part of consciousness. I call it eternity. A lot of people call it eternity. They manipulate eternity. Religions love to manipulate the idea that is within us. We have an innate memory of this thing that we call eternity. We can't prove it. None of this can be proved, but exists. It exists because we exist. Our spark exists. I agree with Howdie. The spark is there. Maybe not for everybody, but the spark is there. I think it's a real experiential aspect to us. And there's a level of faith. Obviously, whenever we venture into the unknown, there's a level of faith and trust and belief in yourself. And to move forward with that sense of connection and the idea of being completely sort of like vibrating in a vacuum. I kind of, that's what I imagined, when he was saying about totality. I imagine vibrating in a vacuum. What would that be? It's like, I have no concept of that. Again, we cannot conceive of something we haven't experienced. And maybe Howdie has experienced levels of existence much more deeply than I have. It's possible. But I don't see it eclipsing. I'm not convinced it is outside of the realm of sort of an umpire for children called conscience. I think he misses the point here. And it is backed up by my sense of being part of something that is beyond this shit show simulation. And the entities or the totality beyond this realm of existence and experience is something that I'm connected with through a creative process. And it's not just an add-on to a shit show world. It's something that every person likely will choose. And how many great art, I admire so many people who've accomplished phenomenal things in their activities, and you could reduce it to, it's just a big seduction. Michelangelo's ceiling is just a big seduction. I suppose you could say that. It ties us to this realm. But it's also a contradiction that the very thing that appears to tie us to this realm gives us a gateway through it. And I guess it's how every person interprets it, how every person deals with this themselves. If Howdie feels restricted by creativity, that's his position, and I would disagree. I would say it can be an enormous asset to sort of bonding or to opening this door to eternity that is not this experience. Anyway, that's what I was thinking when he was. That's a long-winded thing too. I hope this makes sense, because as much as I like a person, I've always felt the need, not the need. I felt it was important for me to question, and Howdie's open with this too. Cliff I isn't really. The guy is dogmatic, and he's completely encapsulated by his intellect. I think Howdie's an intelligent person, but he has an openness and a humility that keeps me interested, but I still question. And he says, hey, question me. You got to find your own path. And I think this is 100% true, that each person needs to find their own path. There may be some overlapping consequences, experiences that work for, more than one person. That's possible. But each person needs to find their own path in this. And what excites me, um, I've always understood and realized, well, not always, but I've always suspected that there was something wrong with the world I lived in. And not just because it's like people killing, mayhem, murder. No, there was just always a feeling of something wrong, which is why I decided I wanted to be a painter. I want to make paintings. And I think it was like an instinct within me that said, do this and it'll be the right path. So anyway, what notes? Yeah, the conscience is like an umpire for kids. I like that. That was kind of funny. There's definitely more to conscience than being an umpire for kids. Um, so yeah, I just sort of made a note is that imagination creates possibilities, and um, it cannot be. It's something that is part of us. Is it an archon construct? The archons gave us the ability to see beyond ourselves and understand the cave. Uh, no, this is not something that the archons, these parasites, would not want us to have any understanding of what it is that we're experiencing. So I'm saying, well, why do I understand that this is a shit show? The archons would do everything and anything to counter that. Anyway, long again. I think I'll post it and let you sort it out. It's like Amalric, the story of the Cathars, which Howdie did a great expose on the Cathars, who seem to have had a really good finger on the pulse of all of this. And Amalric was this Catholic general. I might have even been a cardinal and a general at the same time. And Amalric was at the gates of Béziers, I think it was, that had 250 Cathars living in a community of 30,000 people. And he was he was charged by the Vatican to kill all Cathars because they were a real threat to, they were nice guys. They were a real threat because they were nice guys. And the community of Béziers really loved their Cathar community there. It's a small group. The last bunch left. They were all killed by Amalric's types over a period of, I don't know, maybe a century or whatever. They hounded the Cathars. Anyway, Amalric is standing at the gates of Béziers and saying to the Béziers, look, I don't have a problem with you guys. You're like good Catholics and everything, but give us those Cathars. We got to chop them off at the knees. And the Béziers said, no, they're nice guys. We're not going to do that. So Amalric said to his troop, all his soldiers, he said, get in there and kill everybody, and we'll get all the Cathars. And the soldiers kind of had a conscience hit them. The conscience hit them and said, I don't know, that feels wrong because, if we kill innocent people, that's going to be bad karma. And Amalric said, don't worry about it. God will sort it out on the other side. So it's, I don't know, why did I bring that up? Anyway, I'm not going to retrace my steps here. I thought it was a great sort of expose he did on the Cathars. I had known about Amalric as well. I had done a series of paintings based on soldiers, and I was researching the history of murder and killing in wars, and one of them was the annihilation of the Cathars. That was one of the atrocities committed by people against people. And anyway, the Cathar story is a great story. I like his Cathar thing. All the best, people.